MonitorNerds.com here, and today we're going to be reviewing the Alienware AW3418HW ultra-wide curved gaming monitor. So let's get into it. Out of the box, the monitor comes with a DisplayPort cable, a DisplayPort to mini DisplayPort cable, a USB upstream to downstream cable, a driver installation disc, and a stand that you attach to the back of the monitor. The stand is large and bulky, taking up a lot of space on the desk, while also allowing the monitor to be adjusted about 6 inches upwards, tilted about 30 degrees to either side, and angled about 20 degrees up and down. The monitor is a maximum of 22 inches high by 32 inches wide by about 10 inches deep. The monitor and stand are very well designed aesthetically, sporting a nice gray color scheme with LED lights on the bottom and back of the monitor. The screen is 32 inches wide by 14 inches tall, with a maximum pixel resolution of 2560 by 1080, a curvature of 3800R, a maximum refresh rate of 144 Hz, and a response time of about 4 milliseconds, as well as an overall input lag of about 15 milliseconds at the center of the screen. The monitor has a good color range and solid gaming specs. However, it has a 21:9 aspect ratio, which will either stretch and distort the graphics of a game, or leave large areas of the screen blank. This can be useful if you want to keep another page with information open, but it still limits the immersion that the monitor strives for. The monitor comes equipped with NVIDIA G-Sync, aiding the refresh rate, as well as several screen modes for specific game types. Overall, I would recommend this monitor to anyone who's looking for an ultra-wide gaming monitor. It has great specs and is visually impressive, but it lacks the immersion most curved monitors.
Whoa, 3440 by 1440, 120 Hz refresh rate, and a beautiful IPS panel. This is what a lot of us have been waiting on for a while, and with the last couple of days, I've been using the Alienware 3418DW, and I'm convinced that it is the ultimate gaming monitor, and let me show you why. This monitor possesses the trifecta of specifications with a high resolution of 3440 by 1440, a high refresh rate of 100 Hz, which is overclockable up to 120 Hz through the menu, and a beautiful IPS panel. Often monitors will do one of these things very well and be fairly average in the other two, but this monitor hits the sweet spot for all three. The curve is a little bit more aggressive to what we've seen from Asus or Acer, coming in at 1900R, but I did notice this to be much more comfortable to use than those. It's curved enough to improve gaming and workstation viewing angles, but not so much that it's going to affect critical photo and video editing. We're also getting NVIDIA's G-Sync as well, which matches the frame rate from your GPU to your monitor's refresh rate, so that we don't get any screen tearing when gaming, and everything just looks buttery smooth. For adjustments, we're getting pretty much everything that we need, with height adjustment up to 130mm, tilt, and also swivel. It's also incredibly well built and is very sturdy. It stays planted on your desk and you're not going to get any screen wobble at all when typing. Even when purposely trying to get it to wobble, the display was extremely rigid, a big plus from me here. In terms of I/O, the 3418DW has everything that you'd expect: a headphone jack, multiple USB 3.0 ports including an upstream port, and of course we have HDMI and DisplayPort as well. Just make sure you're using that DisplayPort if you're going to be gaming and using G-Sync. Alright, some more info on the panel. We've got a gray to gray response time of 4 milliseconds, a contrast ratio of 1000:1, a color depth of 8-bit, a brightness of 300 nits, an anti-glare coating, and also 99% coverage of the sRGB color spectrum. So just as you would have guessed, this would make a killer monitor for photo and video editing as well with those specs. But before you do any of that, here are some calibration adjustments that I would recommend. Head over to tftcentral.com if you want to read more about these settings here, because that's essentially where I've just sourced all of these from. Brightness, you're going to want to set between 35 and 75 depending on the lighting in your room. Leave contrast at 75, and then set the RGB values to 93, 93, and 100 respectively. You might also want to head over to the NVIDIA control panel and turn down that gamma a little bit, as it is a little bit high out of the box. With this model, there's no dead pixels or annoying backlight bleed, but I did notice that the top of the screen does gradually get darker towards the top edge. In gaming, you won't notice this at all, but when you're doing basic work with web pages, this is pretty noticeable and a little bit disappointing as well. Honestly though, I'd prefer this shadowing at the top over backlight bleed any day of the week, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think of this as well. And lastly, the white balance of the display has a little bit of shift as well. It's slightly cooler on the left hand side and a little bit warmer on the right hand side, and I don't necessarily think this is an issue with the panel itself, but instead of the viewing angles, because it is such a wide display, and this becomes evidence when looking at the display from different angles. To most people though, this will be pretty much unnoticeable, but to content creators like myself who are constantly checking their white balance for color correction, this can be a bit of an issue. Just refrain from using the far left and far right edges of the monitor for color correction and you'll be fine, as the middle of the screen has absolutely no issues. We're not getting any built-in speakers, but for most people using this monitor, that's not really going to be a deal breaker. I'd highly recommend a solid set of headphones if you're going to be using a display like this to add to that immersion. In terms of design and branding, I am a huge fan of how this monitor looks. To the average Joe, the Acer X34 Predator and the Alienware 3418DW look identical. They're both 34-inch ultra-wide monitors with a dark grey finish, and both have a very similar stand, but the difference is in the details. The chin bezel is much thinner here and doesn't extrude out from the rest of the panel, and the branding here is just perfect, just Alienware. Even from the back, the monitor looks stunning. We're getting subtle RGB illumination with these three lines, and on the top right we have the Alienware logo. Other locations for the RGB are on the power button and also below the logo here as well, which can be toggled on and off through a touch sensitive panel, which I think is pretty neat. You can toggle all of them off and on though through the OSD as well, and also change the color with up to 20 options. Now, being an ultra-wide monitor, you're going to have that nice wide field of view while gaming in that 21:9 aspect ratio. And for those of you who are a little on the fence about ultra-wide gaming, let me just say that it is totally worth it. Ultra-wide monitors pull you into the game by increasing your field of view, and besides making this a much more immersive experience, in some games that wider field of view will actually give you an advantage as well. Of course, it's not all about gaming though, and one of the main reasons I moved to an ultra-wide monitor in the first place was for video editing, and to really stretch that timeline and workspace over a single view. It really is a solid investment for productivity. Alright, now the general drawback from these larger ultra-wide gaming monitors is that the refresh rate is usually cut down a little bit, usually around 100 Hz from what we've seen from Acer and Asus from last year. The Alienware is different though. We are getting a 20% increase over that, landing us at 120 Hz.